Okay, so in this video, I want to get into Ayesha Curry. I've seen a clip of a recent podcast that she did, and I think it is on Call Me Daddy, if that is correct, because that's who the host looks like. And this is the same person that Kamala did her interview with. And so I've been seeing a clip circulating of Ayesha on that podcast, and basically the gist of the clip that is circulating is that she's saying, hey, I never wanted to be a mom, I didn't want to be married, I was Miss Career Girl, all of that stuff. And so when she's saying this, and she's married to who she's married to, which is Steph Curry, he is a basketball player, he's probably one of the top 10 players in the NBA. Like, if you think of the history of the NBA, the records, Hall of Famers, all of that stuff, he's definitely going to be up there. And I really can't understand women, I guess, being married to men who are that influential and powerful, and having that man submit to you and not being like grateful that you basically have the whole world in your pocket. You can do whatever you want, right? Especially because of how powerful your husband is and how powerful you are by extension. Now, there have been a lot of women who have basically, I guess, have gotten bashed online because they make statements like this. I know that Jada Pinkett Smith is one example of that, who people have been talking about in recent years, just because of that interview that she did on the Red Talk Table, or Red Table Talk, which is her TV show or her podcast, whatever. And she had that interview with Will Smith talking about some relationship that she had, and I can't think of the term, but they called it was something stupid, but I'll add that on the screen if I can think of it or remember it later while I'm editing this video. But anyway, so she is who people think of when they think of women who are out there embarrassing their husbands and making them look bad and all of that stuff. And so the general gist of what you get from all of these women coming out and speaking about their relationship and revealing negative things about either themselves or the relationship, it does reflect badly on the spouse. And then also, in a broader sense, it reflects badly on the institution of marriage, because if you have all of these people coming out and speaking negatively about the institution of marriage, that does seem to make people less likely to want to get married, or it just makes people have a negative perception of marriage, when really it's probably just the wrong people are getting married for the wrong reasons. Like, you know how they say the wrong person at the wrong time? It's sort of like that. What that does in turn is it reflects badly on the institution of marriage, and it kind of downplays or reduces the significance of marriage and what that does to our communities as a result. So I want to react to the Ayesha clip where she's talking basically about this, and we can go from there.
I didn't want kids. I didn't want to get married. I thought I was going to be career girl, and that's it.
Okay, so I want to pause it here, because what I find super interesting about just that first part of what she said, she's saying, I didn't want to be a mom, I just wanted to be Miss Career Girl, and that was it. So where exactly is that coming from? Did someone tell you, hey, you need to focus on your goals, you need to make something of yourself as a woman in terms of your career? Like, where is that coming from? Did an elder tell you that, or did you learn that through learned behavior and watching other people do stuff? And the reason why I'm questioning that is because I had an opposite experience where I remember telling someone, hey, I want to be a mom. And the reaction I got was, hey, you have more to offer than just being a mom. Because I don't think I said that I just wanted to be a mom. I just said I wanted to be a mom, period, right? That did not mean that I didn't want to do other things. It just meant this was important to me, right? And the reaction I got was, hey, you can do other stuff. Don't focus on that so much. I'm wondering if Ayesha, I guess, had that same sort of experience or push to be Miss Career Girl, Miss Independent, all of that stuff, because we do have a culture of where women who are millennials, I'm 35, where they have been told, hey, you need to focus on your career, you need to make your own money, so that if you are with someone who leaves you, whatever, you can still take care of yourself, right? So they are removing the dependence on men when it comes to families and taking care of yourself. And so what happens as a result of that is, if you tell women, hey, we don't need men, you don't need a man, what you're also saying is you don't need a family, because you do need a man in order to have a family. And then this also leads into, if you are engaging in premarital sex, you do have the risk of having a child, and you end up being a single mother because of this mentality that you have, that you can provide for the kid on your own, you don't need a man, you're going to rely on the government, that sort of thing. So there's this constant feedback loop to be independent, and that's not just in terms of career, it really spills over into everything else. It spills over into your relationship. It spills over into your ability to have children, because when you do decide, hey, I want to have a family, it's going to be too late, because literally as you get older, that decreases your ability to have children. And so I do know of a YouTuber who did just have a kid at 37, so there is still hope for me. I'm 35, I'm about to turn 36 actually, which is pretty scary. But anyway, so I just thought that was interesting, that that's what she's telling us, and you have to wonder, where is that coming from? What made her think these things?
And I had my eyes set on my goals. And I was never the little girl that like dreamt about the wedding dress and all of that. And then it happened so early in my life.
Okay, so I want to pause it there because it's interesting that she said that she never thought about the wedding dress and all of that stuff, which is super important, because a lot of people do go into the marriage being very excited about their wedding day, what they're going to wear, how big the ceremony is, who's invited, and all of that stuff. And so the marriage really becomes about the wedding day, and then you kind of forget everything else after that. But I also had the same concept, but in the reverse. I didn't really think about my wedding or what wedding dress I was going to wear, and I'm actually really nervous to say my vows in front of everybody, because I do have social anxiety and all of that stuff, so that freaks me out. But I was also really excited about the idea of being married and having a husband and being someone's wife, right? And so I didn't think about the wedding dress or the wedding, but that wasn't what was important to me. It was the fact that I wanted to be married and I wanted to experience that. And so I find it interesting that there's just emphasis on the wedding dress, but that shouldn't really be the focus. And then she's also talking about how it happened so early in her life, and so it's kind of like that thing where you don't want anything to do with something, and then it happened and you're forced to deal with it, and sometimes that can be good or bad. And so she's obviously, I guess, kind of framing it in a negative sense and saying, oh, this happened to me so early, so she had to deal with something that she was not prepared for or not expecting and maybe didn't want. And so I guess in a sense you can say it's not necessarily karma. I don't know the word that I'm thinking of, but it's just this sense of kind of, it's not like getting what you asked for, but it's kind of in that same vein of thought of where you have to deal with something because you weren't expecting it, and then God just smacked you in the face with it, is sort of what she's saying here.
About it, he tries to resonate with me, but he just can't. And he also comes from a place of like, it's effing stupid. Like, what do you, it's not true, so why are you? And I'm like, but wait, like, listen to how it makes me feel. And he's like, but why does it make you feel like that? It's not real. After we got married,
I'm gonna pause it there because I have no idea what she's talking about. It sounds like she's talking about maybe when they first started dating, before they got married and before they had kids, somewhere in that early part of their relationship, where I guess she's trying to tell him, hey, this is what I want, and he's like, hey, this is not real. I don't really understand what that part is about. And she's saying, like, we have kids. Obviously, you do want to be a mom because you wouldn't have had kids, so it's not real. I don't really know what she's saying there, and it's super confusing. And then her voice is kind of annoying here. I don't like talking about people's voices, considering how I sound when I talk, but her voice is just annoying here because she sounds kind of like ungrateful, but she just sounds like, oh, I didn't really want this. Like, that's the energy that she has here. And I just don't get this part of this conversation. So I guess the advice to men would be, if you have a woman who is on the fence about having kids, getting married, all of that stuff, then obviously you should try to find a different woman to be with who wants the same things that you want. You shouldn't have to convince that woman or that man to want those things with you.
we found out we were pregnant with our daughters so quickly. It, I didn't even have time to think about what I wanted anymore. It's so interesting. I spent my entire life like trying to work towards something, and then it kind of just disappeared, and I didn't think twice about it. But after my daughter,
I want to pause it there because it's so interesting, because she's basically talking about the idea of working her entire life for something and then it just disappears. And I think the problem here is that marriage and a family and all of that stuff wasn't one of her goals, because if it had been, she would have just been like, hey, checking this off the list, moving on to the next goal. So she made it seem like, oh my gosh, getting married and having a kid, I can't do anything anymore, because there's so many women who don't have the money that she has do not have the fame that she had and do not have the husband that she had, and they have to figure out how to be a mom and a career woman at the same time. Like, there's no choice for them. Like, obviously they chose to have kids and they need to work to support themselves, but they just have to get it done. They don't have the luxury of saying, oh, I have a kid, I can't work anymore, right? There are some women who are out there doing both because they have to. And again, not to bring Charlie Kirk into it, but this goes back to that clip that I showed where he was basically saying, like, you should be with a man who makes enough money so that if you want to stay home with your kids, you can. You don't have to go out and work. And so obviously that's the situation that she's in. She doesn't have to go out and work. She just wants to. She's looking for that sense of purpose, which I guess is good or bad, however you want to look at this situation. But I think for me, the thing that I find most interesting here is that she's talking about her goals, and because marriage and a family wasn't one of them, it seems like it's blocking everything else for her, which is really sad when she's talking about it in this way in this part of the interview.
Turn one, I remember there being a shift and being like, I have goals for myself. Like, this doesn't feel right. I love being a mom, but I love doing other things too. And I need to get my shit together and figure out what that looks like for myself now.
If I have a career.
I want to pause it here because this goes back to Candace Owens' episode on the Jubilee where she debated, I think, 20 feminists or something like that. I'm not exactly sure of her age when she gave birth to her first child, but the point is she talks about how she enjoys being a mom, and obviously she still works, but she talked about how being a mom is a better feeling than the feeling that she gets when she's working, whereas here Ayesha is basically saying it's the opposite. Like, she's not as fulfilled in being a mom, and she wants to figure out how to make it work to where she can be a mom because she loves being a mom, but she's missing something else, and so she wants to work more, get opportunities and all of that stuff. And it's crazy when you think about it because as wealthy as she is, as famous as she is, as connected as she is, she's not going to have those struggles to find those opportunities. People are going to be falling over themselves to work with her just because of who she is. Now, I don't really know her acting background. I know she was an actress and all of that stuff, but people more so know her because she is Steph Curry's wife and she's going to get opportunities just because of that association. And so it's just interesting her talking about wanting to, I guess, have more fulfillment and kind of being more than just a mother. And so I just find that interesting because I'm in the opposite position where I'm not a mother, and that's what I want to explore. That's what I want to have versus the career stuff, because I've already been through that. When you work, yes, you're focused on helping a business accomplish certain needs and all of that stuff, but it's very different when you have your own business that is your family and you have very specific goals that are really life or death. Like the way that you raise your kid impacts the rest of society because those kids will go out and contribute to society either in a good way or in a bad way.
And I'm not home. Like, did you experience that?
I still experience that. I still experience that. I'm always in therapy talking about this. If you lose all of those things that were interesting about you, even for yourself, like even the things that made me feel confident and cool, then what, like...
I think that's pretty much the end of the clip. So I thought that what she was saying about therapy is super important. Like, yes, you should go to therapy. There are some people who do not believe in therapy, but if therapy will help you work through any issues or concerns that you have, you should definitely be in therapy. It will obviously help you. But at the same time, I wonder why she's still struggling with it. And is it just the mom and the work thing, or is it other stuff that is going on? Because she is an MBA wife. She does have a lot of money, a lot of opportunities and all of that stuff. So you would think that these things would be easy for her to kind of succeed at because she has the money to hire help to raise her kids and all of that stuff. She has the money to start a business and then make sure she has the right people in place so that she doesn't have to do as much, but she can still say, hey, I created this business, I created this app, whatever, right? And get that sense of fulfillment. And so it's just easy for her to go about those things, or easier, I should say. And so I find it super interesting that she's just talking about having to kind of figure out, I guess, the things that she's interested in or how to get those things back because she feels like she lost what made her interesting. And so that is, I guess, a fair call out. Like, you want to be the person that you were before you became a wife, before you became a mom, but you also have to figure out how to integrate those things into your identity as a mom and a wife, because a lot of people do say, like, hey, you know, when you have kids, it becomes all about the kids, and then when the kids leave the house, when they leave the nest, you and your husband don't have anything in common anymore because you made it all about the kids. And so there are some people who say, hey, you know, my husband or my spouse comes before my kids, and that's the reason why they say that, because if you put your kids constantly before your spouse, when your kids leave, what do you have in common with your spouse? What relationship do you have with your spouse outside of your kids? And it's almost like that co-parenting relationship, but you're still married, you're still living in the same house, whereas when you're separated from your partner and you're co-parenting from different houses, you still have opportunities to explore the things that you are interested in because you're not directly tied to that person in the same way. And so I just find it super interesting, this whole concept of being a mom and balancing work and kind of trying to find fulfillment, because with her being an NBA wife or a basketball wife, she does have certain expectations of her as a wife. She always has to look good, be on point, and be supportive and all of that stuff. And I'm sure that can be time consuming and take a lot out of you because you're having to do or be the perfect wife for the person that you are with, right? And so I have some personal things that I can add to that, but I'm not going to in this video. But I do think that at the same time, being a basketball wife is not all that it's cracked up to be, or it looks very different behind the scenes than people think it is. Like, yes, you have all of the money, you can get all of the help that you need, but at the same time, they talk about how people who get too much money and they have everything in the world and they get bored because there's really nothing else for them to do. So I think it's a combination of that, as well as having to realize early on that the goals that you had for yourself are going to be very different because you didn't factor in being a mom, being a wife into your goals that you set for yourself when you were super young. And so I just find this conversation to be super interesting. And I know that most people are taken away from this conversation and saying, hey, you know, this makes her a bad wife, Steph needs to run from her and all of this stuff. But I do think that this is an important conversation because it goes back to how women and how girls are being raised and how they're being told or influenced to think about their roles as women, how they're being influenced in terms of career and family and what they should prioritize more. Because I think that if I had been encouraged to get married and have a family, I probably would have been married super young. I'm not married now. I'm 35. I'm not married. But if I had been more influenced to think about a family and a husband and having kids, I ideally would have wanted to be married as soon as I graduated college, so around 22, 23, and then that would have been okay with me because that obviously was my goal and what I wanted for myself. I just did not find the right partner for that who would give me the life that I wanted and give me the family that I wanted and all of that stuff. So this is a super interesting conversation. I did not watch the full episode, so I don't know what else she revealed. I did find this part of the interview to be super interesting. So yeah, I'm not sure what you guys thought about this video and this interview in particular between Ayesha Curry and the Call Me Daddy podcast. Let me know what you guys are thinking about everything that she brought up in this clip, about motherhood, about being a wife, and about having career goals. Which is more important to you? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.